Okay, this video is about the Feynman technique for studying. I'm Pete Rogers, Dr. Rogers, expert on study skills. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to use the Feynman method. So Richard Feynman was this great physicist, won the Nobel Prize, I think it was in 1965. The guy was a genius. And he talked about how he would sometimes learn a complex subject. He would take out a notebook and he would just start writing about the subject. And he would try to write it in a way that he could use simple terms without a lot of jargon. He also emphasized being able to explain it to someone else with simple terms, a little bit like the Aristotle, quote, the way you know a subject is that you can teach somebody else. Okay, fine, teaching's the best way to learn, that's all great. I can also tell you, whenever you learn something new and interesting, like if I see a great case in a hospital and I look it up and I figure out something interesting about it, I almost always will try to call one of my friends and discuss the case with them, because I know when we have that discussion, it just helps my brain to file that case away and I remember it permanently. I can tell you, I also volunteered to give a case conference at a hospital that I worked at where I would summarize all the best cases of the month. And I did that for years because it would motivate me to do a lot of reading and really make myself a high-level expert. That's what I wanted to be. So a lot of times you should volunteer for jobs that make you learn a lot, okay? And you can seek out training where you learn a lot. So getting back to the Feynman technique, you basically keep writing and writing and writing and summarizing the field, and you learn it as you go, and you'll organize the material. We talked I gave a recent lecture talking about condensed notes. If you're taking a fixed subject, like you need to learn evolutionary biology. Okay, that's a fixed subject. It's pretty well established. And you just need to memorize what the teacher tells you, what the textbook says, what's going to be on your final exam, what's going to be on your perhaps standardized exam, boards exam, MCATs, or whatever. For that, there's going to be an established textbook. I like the outline format ones best. I write all over them. And I cross-reference them to other books. You can see this is what I use for my radiology residency. So I'm showing you that condensed notes works well for that. So condensed notes is typically for a fixed subject. Starting with an outline format book and adding your own notes works well for that. There were times in college for condensed notes, I would just make my own notes. Sometimes I would put them in the teacher's syllabus if that was there to have a baseline structure for it. Other times, like when I was trying to teach myself some chemistry that I had to refresh myself on, I would just take my own notebook like this, and I would just write out everything. I would always have a table of contents and an index. So I'd have the table of contents in the front of the book, and I would write it out like that. Then I would have Post-its marking certain things in tabbed indices. In the back, I would use some type of reference, like all the measurements for the smallest particles and stuff, the atomic scale and whatnot. And what I like about having a handwritten book is I could write out all the biochemistry scales, metabolic pathways in here. Also, I could tape pictures into it. So this would be an example of what I used when I was giving my refresher course on some biochemistry and some immunology. So that's a decent thing to do. For my neuroradiology boards, I showed you this recently. I'm going to get into some new stuff with the Feynman technique, but I'm showing you all the nuanced ways you can do this so you can pick whatever's best for your current situation, where I would just take pictures into a bigger atlas, and then I would put lots of notes on them. So this is what I use for my neuroradiology boards. And I crushed all these tests, just totally crushed them. But these are good habits. Okay. Then I want to show you when I wanted to teach myself nutrition, I decided to go to the computer. So some things are better off done by writing freehand. You can carry that book with you. You could read it in the bathroom, okay? Other things are best put into a word processing file. When I first started out studying nutrition, I didn't know how to draw on a computer. And I started out just making my own notes for myself to master all these different components of nutrition as a field. And then I started to separate them. One was my own personal file, which would be like 1,500 pages, and then I started to gradually make it into a book. That's a good thing too if you really want to get good at something. Teach it to other people, run a conference, be a tutor, or make a book about it. You can also make a video. You can have your own YouTube channel and make your own YouTube videos to summarize stuff, and then you can always watch it and to refresh your memory on the subject anytime you want. And then if I felt that I knew a subject pretty well, or I was really interested in something and wanted to motivate myself to learn it well, I would just write a book about it. This would be an example of some of the sample table of contents. I wrote a book called How to Reduce Risk of Chronic Disease, and I went into a lot of detail, but that was before I knew how to draw on a computer. But I'm just showing you, this would like be a sample table of contents. So what was the teaching point of this lecture beyond anything else you might have heard about Feynman? So the Feynman idea is basically start writing and summarizing the field, organize the material, and as you organize the material, decide what to include, what not to include, how to structure it, you learn the material. And then Feynman's specific points were, using it, being able to explain it without jargon. That's all good, And Einstein had said, if you really know a subject, you can explain it to somebody with simple language. Okay, that's all fine, well and good. But the point I'm making is, for established subjects in school, condensed notes works probably best. I think it works best. Okay, but when you're just trying to learn something open-ended, like learn nutrition on your own, there is no teacher, there is no final exam, there is no boards exam, you're just trying to learn it. Then I think this sort of Feynman attitude can work well. But you're also going to find yourself in the position I just said, that if you just do text alone, there's things that are best communicated by a picture. So it's nice to use a presentation file like a PowerPoint or an open office presentation or something. But the catch with that is it's hard to index, it's hard to file, it's harder to search. You could also go back and forth, have a WordPress file for almost all the text, and then cross-link it to a presentation file for the images, and you can go back and forth in that way. That's fine too. You got to figure out for yourself. But the best thing I think, though, to make this useful is knowing what you could do. And there's differences between having a large reference file to go to and accumulating information, putting journal articles in there and all this stuff, and then eventually that's your resource file you can go to very quickly. So that's one of the things too. Like, people will ask me, how can I write so many books? I've written, I don't know, like about 22 books or something. It's because I've already got tons of material already organized, and I simply have to go to it and take what I want from it, and I'll have the references there and a whole bunch of other stuff. But this is how you do it. And I had built up a lot of stuff over the years, collections of famous paintings because I was interested in studying art, collections of jokes because, nobody wanted to talk about books with me, so everybody liked talking about jokes, so I'd share all the jokes with them. And then I wanted to learn history. I wanted to learn art history. I wanted to learn religious history. So I have separate files of all these topics, so whenever the time comes, I can really quick look stuff up. I don't have to go to the internet for a lot of it. Sometimes, of course, I go to the internet. But anyways, this is how you can use the Feynman method and how you can modify it to whatever your given situation is, and it can be very helpful. So I hope that was helpful.